We're live. We're live. We're live. We're live.
We are alive.
Hello. We are alive
Hello,
and
hello.
live. From the Irreverente Live podcast 2023, from the Biblioteca of Alcántara. This is where we are with our small audience. Maybe more people are coming, but I hope people are watching or will watch on YouTube. Where are you, Joao?
I'm actually in Lisbon. I had to, I'm in Lisbon, not so far actually, near Praça de Espanha.
Okay, is that your home?
No, that's the house of my mother. Yeah.
Nice. All right. So, Joe, the topic of today is real-time composition. But before we get into that, please tell our audience a bit more about you, who you are.
So I'm a choreographer, researcher, performer. Not necessarily in this order. It changes depending on the context and situation. So I'm part of a generation in Portugal that somehow activated what later became known as new Portuguese dance, Nova Dança Portuguesa, which was a movement that happened in the end of the 80s, beginning of the 90s, very influenced by American postmodern and also the different new dances in Europe, French, Belgium, Germany. So I am part of this generation. For the past 30 years, I have been very active, involved in this community, both with my work, also supporting emergent artists, and doing my curatorship in programmation in a project venue that I had in 29 years, which was called Real, and it ended in 2019, just before the pandemic. I could deal with the pandemic a bit more, not with such a big weight in the back. No, it was by chance, and it was actually fortunate to have finished the cycle just before the pandemic. And since then, I have been involved in my PhD. I have been involved my archive. The archive of these 30 years of activity went to Serralves, which is his museum in Porto. And I'm also a researcher and an artist in residency in Forum Dança. So Forum Dança is a school or a venue in Lisbon that works with contemporary dance. And so I have a kind of a carte blanche where I do activities related with my real-time composition research.
Very cool. So throughout the years, you went from like dancing more to more of using your crystallized intelligence or your crystallized knowledge to guide other people on how to dance. Could you say a bit that?
I hope it's not crystallized. So I hope it's in a constant movement.
Crystallized in the sense that
my accumulated knowledge, yes, if you wish. Yes and no. I don't. I try not to think about
the delay.
Yeah, there is a little delay. Yeah, but I try not to think so much about time in a linear fashion, even if this is very hard to accept or to recognize, which is understandable also. But I consider myself very much in the present all the time. So yes, there is a kind of a cumulative experience that I have that I can share and that I want to share. But I continue very active in terms being contemporary being, if you wish.
Do you still consider yourself a student or a learner of your art?
No, for sure. Even real-time composition is a platform, if you wish, is a territory where I can continue to study. In every workshop I teach, I don't really teach. I lay down where my research is, and the group keeps changing, of course, and because the group changes, new questions come. And this changing is not just geographic, but sometimes is also generational. And so the how to preserve this ignorant quality for me is one of my strategies, and it's at the heart of the real-time composition system or platform, if you wish.
Okay. So tell us more about real-time composition. What is it, and how did it start, and how did you develop it?
It's a practice that I have been developing since 25 years, maybe. So a little bit after I started my choreographic activity, I was very involved in contact improvisation in the 90s and in improvisation techniques in general. So I did work with somehow improvisation saved my life or changed my life, at least, because before that I was very much connected with vertical structures of relationship. I was a dancer of the Gulbenkian ballet, for instance, which is very let's say vertical pyramidal structure, top bottom type of relationship. And I was when I was faced with the improvisation in New York, actually, in the end of the 80s. I met Steve Paxton, and then I met many improvisers. Then I went to Berlin, and then so these really kind of open up an enormous territory of being a performer and dealing with my decision making. This was my main interest: is how do anyone take a decision? Where is the hardware or the réservoir where people go and take their parameters and their criteria to take decision A, B, or C. Of course, if you are in a context where someone tells you what to do, the decision is easy, but then you are miserable. But if you have the liberty to take the decision you want, you might fall into the trap to think that you are free. This is my reflection, and then slowly I move away from contact improvisation because I felt the research that this technique allowed was not as chirurgical as I needed. So I start developing this thing I call real-time composition. But it's not a technique to perform live necessarily. It's a way to think, decision making, collaboration, and choice. Yeah.
But it's always related to dance, or so people that come to your workshops are always dancers, or do you have other type of audiences that come to get an insight from this for their other disciplines?
Right. Well, initially, yes. It came. My heritage is dance, of course, and I am dealing with decision making in a pre-language, let's say, state. Dealing with very simple coordinates: body, space, time, gravity, close, far, big, small. So I'm dealing with elements before they become complex, so before they become complicated. Yeah. So in that sense, dance is the perfect ground for me to research and to deal with this. But since 10, 15 years, many people from different sciences, complex system sciences, for instance, anthropology, economy, different fields, of course, within art, people from theater, visual arts, have been have show up in workshops and kind of stimulate my research in other areas. And I did realize after a while that the application of these modus operandi, let's call it like that, in the dance field as a choreographer or as an improviser was one of the applications, one of the possible applications. Because from the moment you start researching decision making, and you start to develop a kind of a lexicon, a vocabulary, a series of exercises, theory, if you wish, a theory around an hypothesis, because that's what a researcher does. So you generate a possibility of relating to those questions. You can realize that many other people from different fields are thinking about this, even from social movements or from politics and from places where sometimes we don't consider to be part of our artistic, let's say, positioning. So I'm very curious about that, because it's a reciprocal and a two-way route. So I offer, and then of course I receive. And in this movement, the research becomes a bit more, let's say, accessible and clear. Because in the end, for me, what matters is to find strategies of sharing.
Yeah. It's really interesting that you're speaking about research in dance. Not long ago, I was speaking with a dancer friend, and we were thinking, like, making the difference of how society and culture in general, or also like when politicians have to choose what to give more importance, or when the audience itself have to like decide what's a higher art. Very often, for example, like music has a high status, and other types of art, including of course dance, it's seen as a lower thing. And we were theorizing or philosophizing if about maybe because there's less research, it's seen as less, and it could be related that because dancers are really connected to their bodies, they are not so in their heads, which is very typical, or it happens a lot in music and other types of art. And so do you think it is related that because dancers are more connected with their body, they're less in their heads, and therefore they do less like paperwork, less research, less academic work, and therefore is the type of art seen as less in society, or is this just nonsense?
No, I'm not sure. I think there is I think the main aspect is the accessibility of an experience, an aesthetic or sensorial experience that comes from dance. With music or cinema or literature, you have a much more immediate impact in terms of direct to the neurons. So, I mean, any sound, any music activates a relationship with the listener that bypasses any form of interpretation. For instance, it goes directly the nervous system, if you wish. But I think the accessibility is the most is the biggest difference. The way you can reproduce music, or like Spotify or any other means or films or books or audiobooks. This is something you cannot do with dance. So I think that this would be the main difference, the accessibility. But on the other hand, for the ones who access dance, they have the possibility of having a deeper experience, because it takes longer to access, and it's almost as if you have to practice to access. As a spectator, because you have a body, the same way a dancer has a body, it's almost as if you have already practiced most of the things you are observing, but in a layer that is pre-language or pre-interpretation. And for sure, if people not only access dance through their visual senses and also as spectators, but also with their own bodies, I think the potential is enormous, of course, because you are. We all know, we as dancers, we know how much touching a body, being touched, running, falling, moving influences the way we perceive time, space, the world in general. And this, of course, puts it in a certain place in terms of sensitivity, almost like we can say, almost like an embodied sensitivity, and not just an intellectual sensitivity. So sensitivity that is embodied by the experience of having a body. The problem is that most people forget they have bodies, or they just use the body to carry the brain. But I would also not fall into the trap of saying of making a binary relationship between brain and body. Of course, I think it's a constant movement. There is no seizure between those two. And yes, we do have to do, and then we have to look at what we do, reflect on what we do, and then we share, and then we listen to other opinions, and then other opinions will change the way we perceive. And that movement must be done continuously. We never, without ever separating the areas.
Yes. At the end of the day, the balance is precisely that, no? Not leaving either body nor mind aside. And what happens when people forget their bodies is they're forgetting this balance, where both have an importance. We have a question from the audience. Luana, our artistic director, loves how you use the concept of lapso in real-time composition. Can you talk a bit more about it? Lapso.
Lapso. Yeah. Yeah. Actually, lapso is one of the words I use. I used it in a book I wrote years ago, which I'm doing a new edition, and I might change the word, because lapso also is too connected with psychology. If you think about, like, when you misinterpret or misspell a word, it's like a lapso. But what I mean about lapso has to do more with the void or falha. So falha not in the sense of mistake, but also in the sense of mistake, but in the sense of fissure, of a space that opens in the timeline, in the narrative. So we all have kind of a sense of continuity, because we build this experience of confirmation with what we expect the future will become based on past experiences. And most of the time, the future confirms what we expect, and any adjustment, the brain almost doesn't recognize unless it's a big change. And when it's a big change, this puts us in a very complex and fascinated place, because we lose the future because we don't have anymore what we expect. Past experiences are obsolete because if we are in a new situation, everything we know is irrelevant, or actually it's noise, becomes noise. So the only thing you have is void. You have this empty space. And my research deals with how to study how we operate as human beings when we are faced with the unknown. And normally what we do is that we act by reflex, so meaning using knowledge that the body storages, or we act based on habits, use information that the body has accumulated through education. And the big problem with this is that those two forms of reaction are embedded on the linear way of dealing with time. So what happens when you don't have this linearity? What happens when you are lost, actually? What happens when you don't know? What happens when you are in front of space-time that has no place to grab?
You have to improvise.
So then you have to improvise. So that's the question, and that's the bug, let's say. At least is my territory of research. If I just improvise without using any form of tool to protect me from myself, my body will go to comfort zone. My body will exhibit itself. My body will do what my body knows. So for me, it was very striking to understand when I move out from a more vertical way of approaching collaboration into a more horizontal way of approaching collaboration, which is improvisation, let's say. For me, it was very striking.
What? Sorry, I didn't get the last word.
So when I was confronted with this opposition between vertical and horizontal, I realized that after all, horizontality is not actually a place where I'm free. Because the minute I allowed myself to do exactly what I want, like I have total freedom, my body falls into implicit patterns. At least it happens with me. I'm not saying it happens with everybody, but it happens with me. It happens with people that I study with, that I work with. This is quite obvious somehow. So it's almost as if, in order to improvise in a way that is not just replicating the habits and the patterns, I need tools. I need a way to inhibit my reflex. I need ways to inhibit my habits. Then I need ways of observation. I need to learn how to observe again, as a child does, how to observe again, how to listen, how to extract from the situation, which looks at the first sight, it looks like void. But if you observe carefully, you will recognize different doors, different windows, different possibilities that the situation is offering you. It's not you who is projecting into the situation. So then the situation is offering you a kind of a new space to research and to develop a kind of a sense of presence. And it's quite amazing when you do that as a default mode. So it becomes like a second skin. It's not, you don't have to think so much about this. It becomes intuition. It's quite amazing the worlds you reach and experiences you have that you never anticipated, because if you ask your brain what is the best option, the brain will always come back to what is the known.
Comfort.
Yeah.
So, in your research, have you looked at the world of improvised theater? Because many of the concepts that you're using or talking about is something that we talk about a lot about in improv, about getting inspired by the body, about the void and not knowing what to do. Like, these are concepts that we use very often. But I don't know if you did like a parallel thing or if you came to our world to see the ideas that being there.
No, I don't have so much relation or experience with improvisation in theater, actually. I was just in Estonia last week. I was teaching a workshop there, and most of them are very involved with action theater. And for the first time, I realized that there was this big movement around improvisation with many concepts and many tools, but I was not aware. And we did found many common areas, but also some many different areas. And being one of them, the question of narrative or the question of speech or and of course, even if I do work with theater, sometimes I have already directed some theater works, but I have never improvised within theater. But I do use a lot of text and voice in my improvisation. But I don't think it comes from the root. The root is not the theater. The root would be more poetry, or would be more concrete poetry, if you wish. I don't know. It's a different route. But it is for sure a parallel research, and but even with my peers within the dance community, the work I do is very counterintuitive, because most of my peers in improvisation, they perceive improvisation has a form of disinhibition, let's say, or has a form of letting yourself go and trust in the, let's say, in the instinct, trust in the authentic movement, etc. And my work, even if we have similar questions, my work is almost the opposite, in the sense that I developed a modus operandi, or a form of relationship with the decision, which is kind of retroactively. So it's almost that I'm constantly rewriting the actualization of. I'm constantly refreshing my presence. I think, to use a computer image, kind of a refreshing my presence in function of new information that I'm receiving. Yeah, but maybe this is very similar to what is research in different places. But
well, in improvised theater, the way I normally see it or try to explain it to people is that when you're improvising, you're being an actor, a director, a scriptwriter at the same time. But also there's a fourth skill that is being able to do all of those in the moment, right? So not necessarily, I mean, of course, being a good actor, director, and scriptwriter will help you, but you will need this fourth skill, which is being able to trust yourself, as you were speaking about, like doing it in the moment. So I do see the connections all the time when you're speaking. And since you're in Lisbon and the festival is going on, I would invite you to come to the shows. Irreverente Festival is doing some great work at bringing types of shows that are not just the classic improv. So shows that mix other types of art within the show, or even shows that are not improvised theater at all. Yesterday we were seeing this show that was dance, using the medium of projections of a video call at the same time that the artists were like they were doing it. So it was like really inspiring, and of course you see how improvisation could, or at least we were realizing how improvisation could drink a lot from those type of bringing other types of arts into the table. So since you're in Lisbon, if you have until Saturday, there's shows. If you have time, I'm sure. Like I don't know if you were planning it already, but I'm sure you would enjoy it, and you would see how the two worlds of dance and improvised theater connect very often.
Yes, I
We have a question.
unfortunately
Yes,
no,
sorry.
unfortunately, I'm leaving today because I'm in the process of moving home, moving house, so I had to come here to pick up stuff. But I'll be of course. I'm very interested to to get in touch with different communities that are researching very similar territories. I would say the main difference, and maybe even the title of my research, real-time composition, misleads the way people might perceive it, because I very rarely I improvise live. Yeah. So my goal with this tool is to research decision making, but not necessarily prepare people for the stage in order to improvise live. Even if I do it sometimes, and people who have worked with me also do it, but that's not my main let's say, drive. Also because I think the research changes a lot if I start thinking about audience. And so I protect myself in that sense, because I'm really studying how decisions are taken, and then you can apply these in improvisation, live improvisation, or you can apply in choreography, or even I have people from cinema working with me, I have people from poetry working with me. So you can apply in multiple platforms.
Yeah. Yes. There's also something called applied improvisation, which is somehow connected to improvised theater, which is using the tools that we learn and develop in improvised theater for non-audience or non-stage activities. So, for example, there's a lot of people doing work with companies to develop some skills that are that you can develop through improvised through the skills or through the exercise that we do in improv. The goal is not to put up a show, is to develop, for example, in this case would be decision making, right? Because we're all the time taking decisions in the moment. The skills and the exercises that we do in an improv workshop can be applied for, hey, let's work on this skill, right? The same that we can do for teamwork or for creativity. So it's I keep seeing all the time similarities, and it's great that someone like you is doing the research and putting it into paper, not so much looking for doing a show, but like, hey, what conclusions can we get scientifically out of this? So thank you for that. We have now question from the audience. because when you were speaking about the concept of lapso, you were also speaking about repetition and how that works how that is part of your work. But not lapso, repetition is not something that people necessarily at first glance would associate with improvisation. So, can you tell us more about that?
Yeah. No, repetition is a key word in my research. I don't perceive repetition has a copy or has a replica. No, replica is one thing, or copying is something else. Repetition implies difference, so there is no repetition without difference. I can say a phrase, 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 I can say a phrase thousands of times. And each time is different, of course, so there is a misunderstanding with repetition when we think we are just replicating something. So for me, what is important is to recognize that inside of repetition there is change or difference, and in order to generate a repetition, for me, it's almost as if you circumscribe. This is almost your first job or your first state of perception, is to circumscribe what I call an operation. And an operation is a set of relations between positions, let's say, just to give you a little bit of the vocabulary I use. So it's almost as if you have positions, relations, and operations, yeah. And if we do reverse engineering from the operation, so what is an operation is a relation of relations. What is a relation is a relation of positions. Maybe it's a bit too complicated. But what matters for me is that before anything has a tool of observation, almost as if I'm an ethnograph, and I'm observing a situation that I had no previous information. What I need to do is to identify and to circumscribe the tensions and the forces that are embedded in the situation, so I can extract the operation. Once I have this operation, which can be done alone or together with others, but once I have this unity, I can repeat this unity without being afraid of falling into a loop. Why? Because inside of this repetition there is difference. This is the premise. Otherwise, I could not. But so I invest a lot of time. It's almost as if my practice has an improviser or a real-time composer is not so much to do, but is to identify this initial operation, which we can say it's an initial condition also. A little bit like in the Gauss theory, you have the butterfly effect. So the scientific name for butterfly effect is sensitivity to initial conditions, which is a great title, a great name. So once you circumscribe and you can touch, let's say, you can have a sense of volume, if you wish, to this initial condition, which is normally embedded in the impact, in the first impact with the unknown, if you wish. Once you have that, my work is about repeating that. It's not about interpreting. It's not about understanding where this can take me. It's not about projecting the future. It's not about convincing the other. It's just about repeating these operations. And this is the technique, let's say, that I suggest. And this protects me a lot from multiple forms of that human beings have, of interpretation, of imposing to the others their own will, manipulating the facts or manipulating the events in order to fulfill their own fantasies. So it's almost as if we normally work based on our own interests, selfish, where the subject is in the center of the equation. And I'm suggesting a transfer of protagonism from the subject to the event. What for me really important is the event, is not the subject. Like for me, I am not important. What is important is the relation that my body, my voice is having with the people, with you, the people that are listening. If they are listening, we don't know how many are, or when they will listen in the future, and these I cannot control. And if I try to control this, I will generate noise in my perception. So in a way, my strategy is to reduce as much as possible my attention. It's almost a form of meditation, if you wish, real-time meditation, where I focus on this thing I call operation. And once I'm able to do that, I just ride surf in the wave of the event. Of course, I mean, maybe this sounds completely abstract. I can show you a little image or video from a workshop so people can have a sense of what I do. I'm not sure if this platform allows that or not.
Yes.
Yeah. You think this would be a good thing?
Yes, absolutely. If you want, I think, because it's true that we're speaking about like concepts and it could get a bit abstract. So if you want to like bring it down to earth.
Okay, so I will share my screen. I'm not sure if I can. So I will do it.
We put the system into trouble because
okay.
Maybe we can't.
It's done. Can you see it?
Ah, yes. Oh, perfect.
Okay, so I will maybe make it bigger. So this is a very short 2 minute, 3 minute, 2 minute thing, but this was a workshop I presented I did in a few years ago in Barcelona. But it's nice because it gives a kind of a sense, a general sense of the ambience of a workshop, and also I put some subtitles in English, so I think I'll just put it and then we talk a little bit more. Pensarmos nas autonomias, porque senão estamos sempre a tentar criar um ensemble, procurar uma lógica coletiva a partir do exterior e forçada, não? Agora, nada mais me importa. Só isto. Nada mais. Porque há muitas coisas aqui que eu tenho que me ocupar. A velocidade, o tempo, a posição do meu corpo, o paralelismo com esta. Muitas coisas que eu tenho que me ocupar. O espectador seria um observador não participante, uma espécie Aqui não, aqui estás observando para poder contribuir, participar. Esta ação, temos duas pessoas aqui e temos esta ação. Aqui não sabemos, ok? Ninguém sabe nada. Não? Estamos todos perdidos.
Very cool. Very cool. Very cool. Yes, I'm so happy you put this video because it really helped at least me to understand better the concepts we were speaking about. I was even like picturing myself the three concepts that you mentioned of action, relation, and operation. Of like
position,
yeah, I could see
relation,
that,
operation.
Position. Yeah, sorry. So yeah, how those things, yeah, it really helped me see it in real life, or like as a real activity that you
practice,
did in a workshop. So thanks a lot for that. Thanks a lot for that. Yes. I'm curious. So the people that come to those workshops, what's you think the main takeaway, or so first, what's their motivation to be there? And what are some of the pillar things that people commented, oh, I take this with me, that maybe you didn't expect them to say?
Right. I think the main motivation to take a workshop with me or with this practice varies a lot, of course, but is anyone who is kind of interested in thinking the thinking, yeah, or has a kind of a meta interest in the practice. I value, and there's a big, enormous percentage of practice in my workshops, but the practice is only there to feed the discussion and to feed the reflection. So I have people who are interested in improvisation, but I have people who are interested in composition, choreography, writing, and then I have performance. I have people who are interested in art critic, or theory of art, philosophy, etc. And so people are coming from different places. Also, people who deal with gender issues or questions, because my work somehow because it works in this level of resetting, it functions also as a protection to any form of definition of what you should be perceived as, or you should become. So you are not yet, everybody in the practice is not yet nothing, because there is no prejudgment or pre-definition. So we also reflect and fight, and kind of the simple fact that we try to understand how judgment operates, or bias operates, or because this is very important to understand how we can protect ourselves from our own patterns and loops. So this attracts many different types of people. And for instance, one thing I never do in the first day of the workshop, this kind of individual presentation, and people take it a little bit as an aggressive or arrogant perspective, but actually not. What I'm doing is to prolong the anonymate, because I think it's very important that people don't project their image, the image they have of themselves in the first day, because this will contaminate the whole experience. But then in the last day, I have a round presentation, And this is beautiful because we present each other after we have the experience, and it totally changes the way we talk about ourselves, because we are not trying to convince anyone, because everybody knows us already from the practice. So this is from the perspective of the motivation, but I think from the perspective of what people can take, or what they have taken, the common well, I have so many years of experience, and so I teach so much that I'm not surprised anymore, let's say, with the outcomes, or so much. Sometimes I am, and this is beautiful, but actually there is a common feedback that I get, which is kind of there is a form of lucidity and clarity. So you come out with a mind that is tuned in to the present in a way that people are not so maybe used to. And more than that, it's a form of tuning in that is supported by a series of parameters and concepts and exercises that you can continue to research by yourself. So it's almost like a tool that you can take with you. And then, and I have also developed formats of playing with this practice in a board game, for instance, in a board game type of environment. So this of course produces, let's say, the body is not invited. The body is not invited to the equation, and this somehow helps the study. And with that kind of board game, I have been working with. I have been working a lot with the different types of people. For instance, I can show you here very fast.
I just have to say we're reaching the end.
Okay.
Because I don't know how long that is. I also wanted to ask if our audience has.
It's just a very simple.
Okay. Good.
Image.
No, yes, show us. In the meantime, I'm going to ask if anyone in the audience has questions. They can send it to us now before we end. So we have a little last minute to ask you a couple of last questions, maybe, if someone has. But yeah, do
you have the? Can you see? No, you cannot see yet.
It doesn't show up yet. He's trying to share the screen again, right?
No, not appearing.
It's not appearing yet.
It's not appearing. Okay. Okay. I think now it's happening.
Yes.
But this is only so you see the how to say
how the board game works.
The board game, how the board game works is not yeah.
Nice.
So you have multiple people playing simultaneously the game.
Nice.
In a very So for instance, here this is a workshop in Argentina. It's like 50 people in the workshop, so people are.
So they're basically exploring the same concepts that we saw on the last video, but in a smaller scale and without including the body, just with objects.
Exactly. Just with objects. Yeah. But
very cool.
Yeah. So here we have multiple. Like you see, each square generates a different type of. I have to put my my computer
Ah,
is
to
losing the
the
battery.
charger. Yes.
Yeah,
Wow.
but
This is
and
so cool
I'm
and so
also
interesting.
yeah, I'm also I just would like to say that I'm teaching 2 workshops this weekend, this summer, at Forum
Uh-huh.
Dança. So the last 2 weeks, of August, you can go to Forum Dança.
Here in Lisbon?
Yeah, yeah, in Lisbon. So this is an
Cool. And
opportunity
for that,
for
yes.
I
So if
can I
someone is
can
interested in taking part of this,
yeah, yeah.
what's the website again? Forumdanza.com?
Forumdança.pt.
PT.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. So we'll ask people to go. Look who we have here.
Hey, hi,
Oh,
João.
hello.
Finally, we meet.
Yeah, finally.
Thank you so much for being part of it, for the festival. We're trying to have you since last year. Thank you so much. And letting everybody knows that also he has a wonderful and beautiful book about real life composition
All right.
that is in Portuguese and English. I know because I have it, I read it, and that's why I was like, and about this, and about that.
You're basically the one writing all the questions in the comments.
So thank you so much for being here. Thank you, Alfonso.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
It's
Thank
been a
you.
pleasure to have you, Joel.
Yes,
Thank
me
you very
too.
much for inspiring us. And
Yes.
we hope to have you in person at the shows of the festival next year.
Okay.
Promise?
Okay. I promise. Okay.
Perfect.
Bye bye.
Thank you very
See you.
much. See you.
Ciao.
And see you at the next episode of the podcast tomorrow with more audience, with another guest.
Okay.
Have a nice day.
Bye bye. Ciao.
Cheers.